Imagine a multi-billion-dollar aircraft carrier, the undisputed king of the oceans, a floating fortress that projects absolute power across the globe. For nearly a century, these steel leviathans have been the ultimate symbol of military might. They have won wars, deterred adversaries, and guaranteed the freedom of the open seas. But what if I told you that right now, this very second, this magnificent vessel is a sitting duck? What if the era of surface naval supremacy is coming to a rapid, violent end? Welcome to the terrifying new reality of modern naval warfare. We are standing on the precipice of a technological revolution that threatens to make the traditional surface navy completely obsolete. Between microscopic swarms of autonomous drones capable of obliterating battleships and an unblinking, omniscient web of new Chinese satellites that have permanently eliminated the concept of naval stealth, the oceans have never been more dangerous. If a major conflict broke out tomorrow, these magnificent ships could become multi-billion-dollar artificial reefs within hours. On April 13th, 2022, the world watched something that military analysts said was impossible. The Moskva, the flagship of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, a guided missile cruiser carrying 510 sailors, bristling with air defense systems, one of the most advanced warships in the Russian Navy, was sunk. Not by another warship, not by a fighter jet, not by a submarine. It was sunk by two Ukrainian Neptune missiles fired from a mobile launcher on the coast, guided to the target using drone surveillance and satellite positioning. The mighty Moskva, worth over $750 million, was sent to the bottom of the Black Sea in under an hour. Over the next 2 years, Ukraine, a country with no navy to speak of, would go on to destroy or badly damage over a third of Russia's Black Sea Fleet, using drones that cost less than a used car. For nearly 80 years, the aircraft carrier has been the undisputed king of global military power. After World War II, the US built its entire foreign policy around carrier strike groups, floating air bases that could project power anywhere on Earth within days. For a surface ship to survive, it must remain hidden until it is ready to strike. The US Navy heavily relies on emission control, or EMCON, enforcing strict radio silence to disappear into the background noise of the ocean. But what happens when the enemy doesn't need to listen to your radios? What happens when they can simply look down and see you 24 hours a day through thick clouds and violent hurricanes? Enter China's Yaogan satellite network. For years, the Pentagon operated under the assumption that continuous real-time tracking of a moving fleet from space was physically impossible. Low Earth orbit satellites pass over their targets quickly, offering only brief snapshots. By the time a satellite spots a ship, relays the data, and an anti-ship missile is launched, the ship capable of moving at 30 knots has already sailed miles away. But China has rewritten the rules of orbital reconnaissance. Recent analysis of China's Yaogan satellites, tracked by space engineering experts, revealed a terrifying reality. These satellites are orbiting intensely between 35 degrees north and 35 degrees south latitude. They are passing over Japanese airspace, specifically regions like Yokosuka, the headquarters of the US 7th Fleet, and Sasebo, which hosts amphibious assault ships as often as every 10 minutes. By monitoring these choke points up to 60 times a day, China is establishing a permanent, unblinking eye over the Indo-Pacific, and the technology is evolving at breakneck speed. Chinese researchers recently demonstrated the use of geosynchronous synthetic aperture radar, or SAR. Unlike traditional satellites, a satellite in geosynchronous orbit sits 36,000 kilometers above the equator and stares at the same patch of the Earth indefinitely. If the loss of stealth wasn't enough to spell the end of the surface navy, the revolution in autonomous drone warfare is the final nail in the coffin. For decades, naval combat was a game of peer adversaries. It took a multi-billion-dollar navy to fight a multi-billion-dollar navy. But the ongoing conflict in the Black Sea has shattered this fundamental law of economics and warfare. We're witnessing the ultimate asymmetric nightmare. Let's look at the Magura V5. This maritime autonomous drone is a masterpiece of lethal asymmetry. It measures just 5.5 meters long, glides inches above the water, and is nearly invisible to traditional shipboard radar. Yet, packed within its sleek hull is a payload of up to 300 kilograms of high explosives. Capable of striking targets up to 800 kilometers away at speeds of 78 kilometers per hour, it hunts its prey with ruthless efficiency. But surface drones are just the beginning. The next frontier is swarm warfare. DARPA, the US Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, has been running programs like Locusts and Offset that envision hundreds of small, coordinated autonomous drones overwhelming a ship's defenses. The logic is brutal in its simplicity. Modern warships carry a finite number of defense missiles. Fire 200 drones at a destroyer simultaneously, and it runs out of interceptors. The math does not lie. And here's the irony. Even the United States Navy knows the threat is real, because they're building the same weapons. The MQ-25 Stingray is an autonomous carrier-based tanker drone currently in development. The US Navy's Ghost Fleet Overlord program has been testing autonomous surface vessels since 2019. The Navy's own Snakehead program is developing large autonomous submarines. The Navy isn't obsolete. Not yet. And there are serious arguments that it never will be. Consider this. 90% of global trade moves by sea. Every iPhone, every barrel of oil, every container of food crosses an ocean. The US Navy, by maintaining freedom of navigation across the world's oceans, underpins the entire global economy. No drone swarm can do that job. And then there are submarines. Far from becoming obsolete, submarines are arguably the most survivable and relevant weapons platform in the modern era. A Virginia-class nuclear submarine can disappear beneath the ocean, remain undetected for months, carry Tomahawk cruise missiles and heavyweight torpedoes, and operate in waters where no surface ship could survive. Submarines are the weapon that keeps strategists up at night on both sides. So, what does the future actually look like? The honest answer is that the Navy of 2040 will look radically different from the Navy of 2000. The question isn't whether it will transform. It's whether it will transform fast enough. We are moving into an era of distributed lethality. Large, consolidated floating fortresses will be replaced by swarms of small, unmanned, autonomous vessels on the surface, and heavily armed, ultra-quiet submarines dominating the depths. The navies that recognize this shift, those that adapt to the reality of the kill web, the drone swarm, and the deep ocean pivot, will rule the 21st century. Those who cling to the romanticized past of the steel leviathans will find themselves with nothing more than the most expensive artificial reefs the world has ever seen. The Navy isn't obsolete, but the Navy that wins the wars of the next 50 years will look like nothing like the one that had won the wars of the last 50. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.